thank you very much for being here tonight. We're delighted to welcome you to this Artists Roundtable surrounding the production of Madama Butterfly by Giacomo Puccini. I'd like to introduce the panel first of all. Immediately to my right, she was last with us as Katya in Katya Kabanova, as Love Simpson in Cold Sassy Tree, and memorably as Mimi in Bohème. I'll never forget that. Our soprano singing the role of Cho-Cho-san, Madama Butterfly, Patricia Rissette. Next to Patricia, the tenor who will be singing the role of Lieutenant Pinkerton. He was last with us as Radames in Aida. And prior to that, he made his debut with us as Gabriele in a wonderful production of Simone Boccanegra, Carlo Ventre. Next to Carlo, our stage director, who last directed our production of Aida, and also directed Vanessa for us, and also the last time we did Butterfly, and Cold Sassy Tree, Garnet Bruce. The baritone who will be singing the role of the American consul, Sharpless. He was last with us rather recently as Marullo in Rigoletto, last season as Zurga in The Pearl Fishers, and our last Carmen a couple of seasons back, he did Escamillo, a baritone Malcolm McKenzie. And our mezzo-soprano who was last with us as Cornelia in Giulio Cesare, Maddalena in Rigoletto the last time we did it, and the third lady in Zandra Rhodes' Magic Flute, from Los Angeles, and an education colleague of mine, Susana Guzman. I say education colleague, I should explain that. She does a lot of outreach on behalf of opera in Los Angeles, and so I feel a kinship with Susana, which is really terrific. And then, making a star appearance, a little late, but better late than never. The tenor who will be singing the role of Goro, the wedding broker in Butterfly. He was with us this year as Spoletta in Tosca and Borsa in Rigoletto. I can't even count the number of roles that he's done with us over the years, and I don't think he's ever been a guest at the Artists Roundtable, so I thought, well, it's about darn time. And I'm proud to say that he's also a former member of our San Diego Opera Ensemble. And on top of that, he is my computer technician, Joseph Hu. So, let's begin. I'm becoming very aware that since this roundtable is now a presence on YouTube, and it sits on our website for audiences the world over to enjoy, that more and more younger audiences, younger folks, are watching this program with great interest. Since Butterfly is such a great first opera for people of just about any age, I'd like to direct my questions to our panel in a way to help those younger audiences get a better idea of what this opera is like and what the experience of opera in general is like and what it can really be. And I'd like to hear that from the artist's standpoint, which I think is quite a unique one. So I'm going to ask the live audience's indulgence, especially since Butterfly is probably well known to most of you, to ask some questions that'll help our younger viewers get a handle on this great piece. So let's continue. First of all, with our stage director, Garnet Bruce. Where did the story of Madama Butterfly come from, and what do you think really persuaded Puccini to set this as an opera?
Puccini was in London to supervise performances of Tosca in 1900, and he went across the street to the theater and saw a play by David Belasco, American playwright, of Madame Butterfly, and it was strung together from bits and pieces of true life experience. Perhaps that was a marketing ploy. And Puccini spoke no English, but he knew that he had to set this to music, and the legend goes that he ran backstage and embraced Belasco and demanded to have the rights after he saw it, because of the vigil that Cho-Cho-san and Suzuki have as they wait all night for Pinkerton to make his way up the hill to the little house. And it was 14 minutes of silence in the theater, and it was breathtaking lighting effects that took us through sunset and then sunrise, the arrival of the birds. And he thought that the tension that was created in the theater was so fantastic that he couldn't wait to set it to music. And then it rolled on from there.
14 minutes is a long time for those three characters to be kneeling behind the shoji screen, waiting, and really not a whole lot of action going on?
Well, but I think that the world had Wagner at this point. And so there were lots of long places. And it's in some places the silences, especially when you get to the final scene of the opera, that draw the audience in. There are these tensions that come with real-life conversation. And Puccini and his colleagues had been writing for about 10 years in the Verismo school. And so finding those ways to engage the audience and make them anticipate and wonder what's going to happen, Wagner was a master of it in drawing sort of a moment out so that you really begin to study and evaluate the characters. And it's like, you know, looking at a large painting or a large canvas with this music going on, that you allow your mind to wander and take, hopefully, the same journey and embrace the same commitment that Cho-Cho-san has.
Mm-hmm. And I'll pick on you for one more question and ask you to very briefly just summarize the story. What is Butterfly about?
Lieutenant Pinkerton has found himself in Japan and has had an arranged marriage with a geisha, Cho-Cho-san, Madame Butterfly, and his impetuous youth, perhaps, leads him to go full steam ahead into this new love and relationship. And then 3 years later, Cho-Cho-san is waiting because he promised that he would return when the robins nest again. And her faithfulness is the central core of this opera because she has waited for so long and kept the faith when other women would have found another option. The marriage broker, Goro, tries to set her up with Yamadori. Even the council Sharpless has a letter and advises her that this is really a foolish path, that no one waits for an American husband to return. And she believes so vividly in the strength of this love and that she will do everything for it. She has a child who is now 3 years old, and his name is Trouble. And she says that when Pinkerton returns, his name will become Joy. And when they finally see the ship, the Abraham Lincoln, in the harbor, sort of the climax of the show and certainly of this production, she yells, "He returns and he loves me." And it is this commitment that I think that we know the outcome, but we then watch the tragic falling through the rest of things as the system is kind of stacked against her.
But then we don't want to spoil the ending for anybody. So we won't go any further with that, but just know that there's a twist, as there is with every great opera. I'd like for each of the singers to describe your characters for us, and I'd like to start with Pinkerton. Pinkerton really is one of the first characters that we see in the opera in Act 1, and I think an awful lot of what happens stems from Pinkerton's character. So, Carlo, could you tell us a little bit about Lieutenant Pinkerton?
Oh, okay. I don't love Pinkerton role. I agree to sing Pinkerton here for 3 reasons. The first one, because I love San Diego. The theater, the audience, the warm audience. The second reason, because there is a beautiful person here, is Ian Campbell. And the last one, because the cast is very, very good. But Pinkerton is a difficult role because he's a bad person, a bad guy during the opera. And for me, it's very difficult. Maybe this is the last one. I don't sing. After 15 years, this is the last.
You've been singing him for 15 years?
Yes.
And do you think he's completely bad? Is he a villain? Or do you think perhaps he's just young and inexperienced and stupid, perhaps? Or
I think, I don't know, ignorant.
Ignorant might be a better word.
because he goes to Japan. He don't know the usanze. Come si dice? Usanze.
The customs?
The customs in Japan. He pay normal like a beer. I take. But just in the last part of the opera, he proved to save himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he comes back for that one moment of regret, and this was added by Puccini, I think, rather late in the process, and certainly after the premiere of the work at La Scala. So it might even have been an afterthought, or perhaps the audience felt they needed to hear something more from Pinkerton, in terms of being sorry for the position that, he finds himself in at this point. But you don't identify with him.
Absolutely.
It's difficult.
Yes. Absolutely.
But I think there's an important point there that certain roles for actors and actresses, as well as opera singers, anyone who's portraying another character, there has to be something simpatico with the character to really be successful. I think you have to really understand that character.
Pinkerton sing a beautiful melodies, but the character is so bad.
Yeah.
Good man.
Okay. Patricia, Chocho-san, Madame Butterfly herself. Tell us about her.
Well, first, I want to congratulate my dear colleague here. It is no easy task to do a roundtable interview or otherwise in a language that is not your foreign tongue, and that was handled beautifully. Much better than And I want to say something about Pinkerton, because I think it's very important. I'm very sorry this is your last one. We'll talk about that. I don't like that. Because my feeling is Pinkerton is young, is passionate, is impetuous, but he does not mean any malice whatsoever. I think if Pinkerton is portrayed, and you portray him quite sympathetically, actually, if he's portrayed in that fashion, then it makes sense that Butterfly goes the distance with this person and allows herself to unfold her entire heart and her soul and her being to this man. And I think that's the trick with Pinkerton. But most Pinkertons do complain about the character, because no one wants to be the bad guy. But so that's my comment on that. Now, what did you ask me? Something about Butterfly?
If you could describe the character as you see her.
Well, she's young and naive in a way, but not naive in other ways. She's already experienced the death of her father, keeping in mind that death was a very much a cultural custom. So there's layering that comes with that isn't necessarily given a lot of opportunity to explore in the score, but there is definitely layering. But she's a woman of great strength, in my opinion. Whenever I play any character, and as you said, you've got to find a bit of yourself in there. There ain't no 15-year-old geisha going on in here. But as many of my other Butterfly colleagues in the history of time, but the truth of the matter is, this is a woman of great strength and is able to adhere herself to that noble sense of strength and hope that she has inherent in her. And that's a quality that can exist in any culture and at any time period, and therefore is translatable, in my opinion. And so that's something I hold on to in my idea of the character. You really see more. At the beginning of the opera, we see the foreignness, especially in this production. You see the exoticism of what this person is. You really get to know who Chocho-san is in Acts 2 and 3. And when you see her journey unfold and how she reacts to what looks like the inevitable, he's not coming back, he's probably been married, you've given birth to a child that's now going to be called a bastard, and blah, blah, blah. And she holds on to that. But I also like to layer that with the reality of being human and fleshing out the character really by also, there are moments, albeit private, but there are moments of great doubt that slip in there. None of us can hold on hope 100% of the time. And I think that's what gives the character more depth and more believability, and ultimately allows us all to relate, because that's what moves us in theater and art, is when you can somehow see a piece of your story or something that you can understand up there, or read it or experience it, and that's what moves us. And so, did I answer your question?
That's great.
Okay.
That was great. Well, we'll come back to something, because I want to ask you about the aria, but let's move on to Malcolm and talk about Sharpless, the American consul. Now, this is a much more sympathetic American character in the opera. So, what is your perspective on Sharpless?
Yeah, I guess I come back to Carlo as well, but with him saying he's playing the bad character. I play a lot of bad guys, so it's kind of interesting for me to switch around and play the sympathetic character. In fact, I think one of the difficulties of playing Sharpless is that he can be kind of a Johnny One-Note character, in that he's sympathetic to everyone, and so it's interesting to try and keep that kind of motivation going throughout. But I would also say that one of the most wonderful thing about Pat's performance of Butterfly is the way that she introduces that little bit of doubt, that humanity into Butterfly, because as an audience member and also as portraying Sharpless myself, you want to have a character that you can believe and fall in love with, a butterfly that is somebody that you're not pitying because they're so deluded, but rather somebody who you can identify your own intimate hopes with. And if she shows that she's doubting that she's really a human being, then we really become involved with her. It's not about the devotion that she shows, because that's just devotion, but it's about the doubts that we see in those little moments. I love those moments. It's a wonderful thing as an actor to play off of those moments and to see that happening. It's wonderful. As far as Sharpless is concerned, yeah, he's the foil to Pinkerton. Obviously, he's the moral thread, the conscience of the piece, the one who's constantly pointing out to Pinkerton the error of his ways even before he's made those errors. He's a sympathetic character for sure, and he also is a link between the audience and the relationship going on between one of the two links. I think Suzuki is probably the more important link, but between their relationship, so that the audience has a window in on what's actually happening. As far as who Sharpless is, he's supposed to be an authority figure, but an American authority figure, the opposite of the Bonds, the Japanese authority figure. So, and he's usually portrayed as an older guy, although in this production we have the unique opportunity of having him be at least similar age to the Pinkerton, which is kind of a fun twist. So
good. Suzuki, Susanna, let's talk about Suzuki. And I heard you say, not terribly long ago, in one of our conversations, or perhaps I overheard you say that you really love Suzuki. You were looking forward to doing this role again. So I'm very interested to hear what you have to say about her.
Very simply, I love doing Suzuki because I have the best seat in the house. It's the truth, 100%. There's a beautiful line that Goro says at the very beginning when he describes me, and he says that I am her servant from before, her much beloved servant from before. And I feel a twofold identity. One is I believe that I see what the audience sees. I believe that I represent what the audience. Don't go that way. Like you know, at the end of Romeo and Juliet, when the letter misses, you know, I've always wanted to say, don't, hurry, go past her, get her, she's not dead. That's how I feel. I'm the person who the audience, we know what's happening. On another really deep angle, I think that I had this image that I was possibly in the geisha home with Butterfly, and that I helped her dress for her evening performances. And I have never seen her so happy. And this maternal desire to have a person experience a spectrum of happiness that I know I will never know. I have a vicarious joy at her joy, but also as a parent who's watching their child ride a bicycle for the first time. You know they're gonna fall, but the thrill of the wind in their hair and flying down the street, you don't wanna deprive them of that, so you support their joy. And she just, quite frankly, Suzuki loves Butterfly. She loves her. She loves her joy. She wants to cushion her falls. And when I kind of see a little bit of a springboard, Pat's character is so youthful and sympathetic, and when she has those down times, I feel that we switch places a little bit, and she tries to lift me up, saying with her optimism, no, it's going to be okay. I promise it's going to be okay. And me knowing that it's not, but I don't want to break her heart. So and there's one moment, it's going to tear me up just to think about it. You'll see it when you see it. There's one moment in the opera where the strength of this relationship happens and no one's even singing. It's with the beauty of the music supported by the relationship of these two women. And it's so powerful. And I'm not going to tell you about it. It's in the last act, and it's pretty magic. It really is magic. During rehearsal, electricity fell just all the way through me. I hope you guys feel it too.
That's great.
Did I answer you?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Joseph, Goro, the marriage broker. Tell us about Goro.
Well, I love this character very much because I don't really think he is a bad guy. He is actually a bridge and a wall between these two cultures, conflict with each other. Why I'm saying that? Because I assume Goro maybe can speak English and Japanese at the same time. So he served as an interpreter between these two peoples, and also he is actually the wall because he probably tried to exaggerate what the service, the Japanese girl can offer to the officer. At the same time, he probably exaggerates, to the officer, saying, you don't have to pay that much. They don't really care. Those girls, they can just do a service and they just go home. But the fact is, I think that from another point of perspective, from the Oriental, as I'm an Oriental Asian anyway, I think that the woman in that period of time and in Japan, the suicide, also the soldiers' suicide, they don't take that as a tragedy. They probably take that as just an honor, just the fate of a life, and they go through. And so by the end, the butterfly realized that whatever happened to her already happened. So she wants to take the high road as her father and to just kill herself. For her, maybe that's the best result because she doesn't really want to stay in this society, feel like she's nobody anymore. But, so back to the point about Goro, I think a lot of people portray that as an evil character, but I like to just bring a little bit comedy into the opera, make this whole thing a little bit more fun, and so people will not feel so heavy when they see this opera. That's how I interpret it.
Well, and you also had the opportunity to have a little bit of a fight.
Yes.
With Cho-Cho-san and
fight.
with Suzuki.
I have done many productions of Butterfly, and this one is not so violent, put this way. Last one, I was in Detroit with Maestro Müller, and the stage was raked. And the stage director came to me and said, could you roll and then sing that line with your head hanging there? I said, sure, I will try it. And I scared the production director to death. They all concerned about my safety. And then I was joked backstage, and when they asked me, do you feel safe? I say, yeah, sure, because I used to coach Jackie Chan, so don't worry about it.
Well, now, 3 of you are portraying Japanese characters, but only one of you is actually Asian. And Joseph, that's you, of course, from Taiwan. Of our last 3 butterflies, 2 of them were Asian, 1 Japanese, and 1 Chinese. If there's a question here, I think it might be this. Do you think it helps to have Asian singers, given they have the voices, singing Asian roles, or does it matter? And I'll just open that up to everybody. Perhaps, Garnet, you could do a take on that.
Well, when Francesca Zambello created this production, it was very much centering on the central ideas of East versus West, because that comes up all the time, and it's something that these authors were dealing with at the end of the last century, being the 19th century, also at the end of the 20th century. What is the role? What happens when cultures mesh? And so she very much wanted an Asian presence in the piece, and working with designer Anita Yavich and Michael Juergen and Alan Burrett to create an aesthetic that felt it reflected what we know about Japanese art. You know, the big open landscapes, the sensitivity of colors, almost a watercolor feeling to these places that are not Butterfly's house, but Butterfly's happiness. And in terms of the central character, that's part of our job, is to make us believe that we are seeing someone who is outside of this world. And we have references of gesture and look and tone, and we have wigs and makeup to help us create that illusion. But in any of these characters, we need the force. It's an Italian composer, and he's writing for an Italian audience in 1900, and he has something to say to that audience that is not about just pictures, but it's about emotions and ideas. So I think you want a committed singer to sing these roles.
Not being Asian, I should address this. I think, look, we have to deal with the fact that it has to be sung over a certain number of orchestra players, and it is very Italian, and there are some things about the piece musically and dramatically that are in direct contradiction with one another. I mean, these big, luscious Italian lines are not exactly what I would describe as typically Asian expression of this kind of character. So those things, I don't care if you're Asian or not, those things are already in contradiction. So it makes perfect sense. First, you know, we are people of the theater. We are. I never get to play who I really am on stage. I always have to play another character. So we have to act. And as Garnet says, there's makeup and costumes and everything to create the illusion. You know, some adjustments have to be made. For example, you know, the richer the wedding in Japan, the more kimonos you'd have on, and on a very slight, typically Japanese young girl, this can be done, but on a Western American beef-fed sturdy frame. You know, as you're going to find most of the time with people who sing the kind of repertoire that, like Butterfly, you're going to find it housed in a body not dissimilar to mine. The authenticity of those choices has to be re-examined. You can still have that look, but doing something like putting the collar, you know, simulating a second kimono so that it looks like it's there without doing it. Otherwise, you do look like a linebacker coming out for the first thing. And, you know, it's so some slight adjustments that hopefully would not actually visually be missed on the part of the audience do have to be made to compensate for the physique not being. But in terms of movement and attitude, that is something that can be captured by any actress, frankly.
Anybody else want to?
Well, I think the most important thing is the voice. Is not just the look. Because if we are only look the appearance, then I will not be here. I should be in the Peking opera doing those things. So the makeup and also the voice and the understanding of the text and make the drama become real. But so that's I have done Butterfly with a lot of Asian singers. Unfortunately, actually, a lot of them can do other things, but most of them, even they don't have the voice for Butterfly, but they was the force them to do those roles because they look like Butterfly. Even some of them are Chinese. We don't really actually look alike, but people have no understand. People don't understand that. So I think that the most important thing is how the voice and also the acting can convince the audience. You know, like Pat would be wonderful Butterfly on stage. It's not because she looks like me. I mean, the color doesn't really match at all. But it's the voice and the feeling and the interpretation make the opera believe. The audience believe that's the character. So that's what I think.
Well, opera has I think, a long history of being colorblind. It's one of the wonderful art forms that can be colorblind, and I think I hope we can keep it colorblind. I know in this age of visual medium and everything's all broadcast in HD and you want everything to look just right, but I think it would be a real shame to exclude certain voices because they didn't look the part. I mean, how many, look at Otello. How many tenors are there who can sing it in the first place? Do you care what they look like? So no, I think the more we can keep it all colorblind, the better.
Yeah. Well, it's also sex blind, or gender blind, rather.
Indeed. Indeed.
We're so used to women playing men and men playing women in the history of opera that, that we don't even think twice about it anymore. I want to turn to Pinkerton because there's a sort of an interesting thing about this role, and that is you sing all the way through Act 1, and it's a big sing. You've got a couple of arias, if you want to call them that, maybe an arietta and an aria at the beginning of the act, and then this huge love duet, which is just sumptuous. Then you disappear for an entire act and a half and come in at the very end.
Because I need to eat something.
Yeah. Well, what is this like? I guess what I'm getting is, what is this like personally for you? What do you do during that act and a half? And do you feel like you have to go warm up and stay warm so that when you come back you're in perfect voice, or how do you solve that dilemma?
Well, after the first act for me is I'm tired. I need one act for take my energy to come back in the stage, because I start to sing the love duet after 35 minutes when I stay in the stage after singing many things. Amore Grillo, Dovunque al Mondo, many things. I start the duet a little tired. A difficult duet.
Yes, you're talking to the woman who's singing one of the longest roles in opera.
I have got to jump in here. In the duet, there are so many spots where he gives Pinkerton a minute to sort of breathe out, swallow a little bit, and Butterfly keeps going, connecting phrases where I have the choice, either breathe or swallow. Those are the choice, not both. So, but anyway, I'm sure you are tired.
Because you entrance after 20 minutes. It's normal, you sing. But I'm so happy in this production because I have the possibility to sing what the one more important American sopranos in the world today is Patricia Racek.
Well, it's true. We've got quite a wonderful international cast for this Butterfly, and I'm thrilled. I can't wait. Susanna, I know that because, you're not just a wonderful opera singer, but you're also an educator, as I referred to earlier. And there's a question that I think maybe you've answered before, but it's a question I've never really asked at a round table. So I'm putting you a little bit on the spot, and that's this. What's it like to be an opera singer? What does it feel like when you've got a juicy role, which you've got,
I do.
A character that you love to portray, which is true, and all of the elements in this show, in this production, the director, the cast, the conductor, the orchestra, everything is clicking just right. Describe the experience of singing in that kind of an environment.
Do you know what a golden moment is? A golden moment when your child rides without training wheels, when you have your first kiss, when you get your college diploma, or when you see someone safely return home. We as opera singers are able to stand with our feet planted in the ground and feel the energy of the earth soar out of our beings into an audience of people who say, "Oh, I know just what that feels like." And it comes back to us. And sometimes when we sing, it happens just like that. Sometimes it really doesn't. Sometimes that energy goes out there and no one knows what you're talking about. But Butterfly, pretty much from the starting note to the very end, is one long golden moment. throughout this entire show, you can feel, that's really why I say I have the best seat in the house. I look at the Pinkerton when he first sees Butterfly come in, and you are an amazing Pinkerton. You have tenderness and eagerness and sexiness on your voice. It's in your eyes, on your face, and here we stand, and you come on glowing, and it's so cool because they're classmates in this one. So there's that sense of camaraderie that we've all felt with someone who's our best friend or our golfing buddy or someone who you say hello to on the telephone, and you go, "Whoa, it's good to hear your voice." That's what this is. And then in this production, I have decided he's my ex-husband. And I know we all know what that feels like in one way or another. So that's the short answer. That's what it feels like to be an opera singer. It's finding a way to tell everybody else, I feel like you do. And do you ever feel like this? And if we do it right, they say, yes, we get it. And that's what opera is like.
I've got to open that question up to the other singers as well. Do any of you want to jump in on that? I've always wanted to know, what is the sheer physical feeling of standing there doing what it is that you do?
Well, I mean, it's really hard to beat what Susanna just said. I mean, beautifully said, I must say, and really well articulated and very generous in the way to describe it. But there's, you know, you're up there and you can feel the energy from you folks. You can just feel it, and every night feels different. I love live theater for that reason, because you can try and do things, you know, and match some moment of greatness that you thought you had the last time, but it is different every time because of the audience, and that's very exciting. But there is a feeling, and I mean this in the most generous of ways, but there's a feeling of power to feel that just literally that amount of sound come out of you. I mean, we've all trained long and hard to make those two little blades of grass make that much sound, because that's really what it is basically. And there's this feeling of power, and it always humbles me, frankly, because it's such a privilege to be able to express in our own way our comment on humanity through the stories and through the vocal colors and through the collaboration of every single experience of, you know, I've done so many Butterfly productions now, and every time it's different because the ingredients are different, and that's an incredible feeling to sort of be put in that pot of creativity and then be able to just come out. And it is I always say singing opera live performance is like cooking on high heat. It is just, you take it, and it's on the highway. You know, it's fast and furious and intense and athletic and visceral and sexy and subtle, and it's the stuff of life, and it's an incredible feeling to be able to do that.
Anyone else? You have a feeling pretty much all of it's been said. Yeah.
I'm still back at sexy.
What did you say?
We're still back at sexy.
Oh yeah.
You don't cook at home?
Well, yeah, no, I cook a lot. No.
I do have one quick thing to say. I noticed this in schools, because you said the education thing, and I also think this is very important on a mechanical level. Opera is an acoustic art form, and what happens with the voices, they actually acoustically go in your ear, where you have to actively engage your ears to listen. And I've noticed, I'm from Los Angeles, and in Los Angeles we have many schools that are teaching our elementary school kids with Madama mics. They're in the classroom speaking to the children in class of 20 kids, and they think that is giving them each an opportunity to hear equally, when I believe with all my heart it is teaching them how to be passive. It's teaching them how to let an experience soak into their heads through force feeding as opposed to engaging. And you can physically see the difference. When an opera singer sings next to you, you feel it through your whole body, because Our voices are trained to sing over an orchestra of 50, 80, 100 instruments with a chorus of 30 to 60 people on stage, and we sing the way we do to tell the story to you in an active and mutually engaging manner. And that's the big difference and the real beauty of opera, if you're out there, to see it live, because live and acoustic music rewires you and changes you. And I think that is really the ultimate beauty, is we are an active art form.
That's a bad.
You are educated.
Well, great art transforms. You know, I don't care if it's a painting, a sculpture, a poem, a novel, or an opera, a play. You can't come away from a great work of art unchanged. You know, it does transform you. And the transformative power of opera, I find so much more powerful than just about any other art form that I know of. And that's why I'm so passionate, so crazy about it and passionate about it. It's so wonderful. Gosh, after all that highfalutin stuff. But I do want to come back to you, Joseph.
Yes?
And ask you just a little bit more about Goro. You're kind of the go-to Goro. Get it? Today, you're singing Goro. You've sung it many, many times. How do you keep it fresh? You've done the role so many different times. How do you ever discover anything new about
Well,
Goro?
it's simple. You know, every time you sell a different girl. Well, each production are different, and as I said, if you love a role, and like I do love Goro, and you actually find this is really a lot of energy involved, and you try to make the story a little bit happier at the beginning, and not so down and so dramatic. Of course, by the end, you are the bad person, and people boo you sometimes, but you know. And also just put some imagination and put myself into the scene at that moment, and thinking I am actually in Japan and during the period of time, and those things all help. But it's just, the other thing is because the music. The Butterfly is just such a great music, and you will not get tired of it.
Oh, it's
That's
gorgeous
how I
stuff.
put it.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. Those Puccini lines, those Italianate lines. Although he worked very hard to get authentic Japanese folk tunes woven into the fabric of the score. And they are there, but they suddenly become Italian under his touch. You know, you're never very far from the Italian pronunciation. Garnet, you've directed this Francesco Zambella production of the opera before. I love this production, but it is controversial because the lack of the little house on the hill, which a lot of people who grew up with Butterfly miss.
Oh, we have the little house.
It's
a
it's
substitute.
very, very tiny. Can you tell us can you address that? What was Ms. Zambello going after in this production?
When you treat any work of the standard repertory, you want to approach it as if you've never experienced it before, and you want to find a way to take your audience to look at it in a different way, from a different angle and a different point of view. And Francesca and Michael were doing their research on the piece and came across the discarded Act 1 libretto, which was a consulate scene. And there was another scene in the second act also, which had been set in the American consulate. So it was part of their thinking in their letters when they were writing back and forth in 1901 and 1902. And they hit on the idea of, could it work? Could this be an expression of the Western world? You know, the consulate, it's still Nagasaki, it's still 1904. And if we just made the Western world and the Western music make sense from our point of view, and then Chocho-san becomes the outsider. And as it evolved, they also found that there was a fluid nature to the production that could happen, that we have furniture that can come and go, and moods can come and go and change very quickly. Puccini always wanted the best stage directors, the best stage designers, and Francesca believes that, and I'm quoting her at this point. And he was limited by the stagecraft of his time. I mean, if he had moving lights, he would have loved that, I think. And he was always pushing and encouraging the theater to be out there. And I think it's part of what made him very successful, was to attach a visual sensibility to this musical sensibility. And that was what guided us as we made this production, and to try and find some of the fluidity and mood changes in the music within our visual eye. An audience in the 21st century is used to an image changing very rapidly via film, television. Our lives are moving much quicker than they would have been in 1904. And therefore, the theater needs to understand that and guide us into a place where we can hear and experience a piece we may have heard many, many times and look at it from a different point of view.
Well, then, let me ask another quick question, and this has to be our last question, so if each of you would answer briefly. But I think this is going to be a challenge, but I think it's a very important question, particularly for the younger folks that may be watching this on YouTube, and that is, why is Madame Butterfly Madama Butterfly?
And also very exotic with Asian culture and American culture all together on stage. Mm-hmm. And the music the melody is just incredible. All the tunes are easy to remember. Mm-hmm. And of course, there's also a very funny character, Goro, too.
Okay. All right. We'll leave you. Susanna, why is Butterfly perhaps a great first opera?
The story is what's important in Butterfly. When you remember when you would watch, who's the girl, Dorothy Hamill, Ice Skate, and you thought that looked so easy? When you have great singers who are able to tell the story with such ease, then you can focus on the story. And the story with its beautiful melodies, every bit of it is accessible, from a mother and her child, from that romance that makes your knees weak, to that heartbreak that makes you fall to your knees. There is something here that every single person has experienced, and when you have such virtuosos dealing with it, you're all going to feel like you can ice skate. You're all going to think you can sing opera when you finish singing this, truly.
Malcolm?
Yeah, I've often described this as being a great first opera in that it has everything that opera needs. It has beautiful music. It has emotional content. It's a story that's accessible and yet exotic, and also, as I tell my friends, it's movie length. It's not so long, and I'm sorry to say that's one thing that people consider. Oh, it's going to be really long. It's going to be a long opera. But you get to the end of Butterfly and you go, oh my God, it's already over. I can't.
There you go.
All these people that are sitting around while I'm up there singing, they think, oh, it's over. What is up with that?
Garnet.
I think it also comes from two sort of young, innocent characters, maybe three if you include Sharpless, and you get to see them grow over a course of time. And that time, especially when Act 2 and 3 are combined, it is one day. And it is one of those traditional, concepts of the theater, one of the laws of what happens in the course of a day. But you grow along with them, and you share these little moments, and there's that extra tension and pressure of it that I think really speaks of what happens next. What happens next? Puccini creates such great tension that you are engaged in the story at all times, and he worked so hard to find how to say it with themes or brief moments or bits of dialogue. One character, Kate, doesn't even have an aria. She just has a couple of recitative lines, and yet they're the tips of the iceberg, and you reach each one of those, and they're all held together by the one character, Chocho-san, who guides us through.
Carlo.
Because Butterfly is a masterpiece. Like a Picasso, Pinturicchio. San Diego now have the possibility to listen this opera with a fantastic cast.
Mm-hmm. Patricia.
Well, in the name of being brief, it is a feast for the eyes, for the ears, and for the heart, simply put. It's something really quite, I win the brief award.
Did you write that down? Because that's a good marketing thing.
Is
It is.
Get
It's
that?
very good.
Copyright, Patricia was said. You're all my witnesses. I'll need your signatures after this.
Thank you all very much for being
I have one quick question of the audience. I'd like a raise of hands. How many of you have seen Butterfly before?
Yeah, there you go.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And how many of you have a moving memory of that experience?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I think it was the first opera for a lot of people. And it's such a great work. And I can tell you from having sat in on some of the rehearsals, this is the butterfly to see and hear. I'm very excited about it. Thank you all for coming.